You are listening to the CMQ Investing podcast. My name is Chris Franco, and this is a very unique episode because it's the first episode where I'm responding to a review that we received. It was the first negative review that I've ever received, and it was a pretty intense one, and I want to talk about it. I want to address it. I want to share some thoughts on it, and I want to share your thoughts on it because many of you DM'd me once I posted about this on the Charlie Munger Quotes account on Instagram. So the review is titled Episode Number 74, Annual Letter, and they're referencing episode number 74, where I did a live reading of the Berkshire Hathaway annual letter that Warren Buffett writes. It just came out, a week ago? And I read it live on a Saturday with an IG Live audience. And, we had fun. It was meant to be just, very casual. I had not read it yet. And so I was experiencing it for the first time. And sometimes reading things out loud, it's different than when you read it in your head. I'll get to that in a second, but let me read you what the person said. And this comes from SLUF A7D. So if you're listening, Sluff A7D, I did take your review seriously, and I take all the reviews seriously. So let's read what they had to say. It says, Chris, I believe in humor, but you showed no respect for Mr. Buffett. Harping on italics through your episode, insinuating he doesn't know how to write, calling him dude, poking fun at the death of Paul Andrews, etc. Your mentor, Charlie Munger, says avoiding stupidity is a big part of having a successful life. ... You failed miserably! ! So when I saw this, and I woke up on a Saturday morning and saw this, and first thing I thought was, oh no. I felt, in a way, I almost felt bad because the fact that someone interpreted what I was saying in this way was just not at all how it was meant. I could go, and I don't want this to be defensive. I don't want this to be something where I sound like I'm, I want to be clear. I like negative feedback. I like all feedback because it helps me be better, helps me make better content, and not just for the podcast, but just in life, period. Feedback loops are critical. I respond in some ways or another to all the feedback I receive about the content. It doesn't mean I don't have a backbone. I'm not just like, well, I guess I'll do that too. But it is, if someone takes the time to write a review or to reach out to me, I digest it, I appreciate it, and I tend to apply it in one way or another. But when I said I'm not going to be defensive, something I will share probably in this episode in post-production is different clips where, it shows that I had a lot of respect for Warren Buffett in this episode. For those of you who've not listened before, you might not realize or have a sense of my sense of humor, but I mean no disrespect, obviously, to Warren Buffett. I've learned so much from him. He is the GOAT. And that I never poked fun at the death of Paul Andrews, and I would never poke fun at anyone's death. I know this person is deceased, and I'm not making fun of him actually. It's just, we're trying to keep this light. So all jokes aside, obviously, I wasn't thinking about this a real person who passed away and left behind family and things like that, but you guys know where my heart is. Because that's something that I just out of principle, you don't do. But I can explain and talk you guys through what happened. So I thought about this a lot. Today's Monday. This happened on Saturday. And I thought about, how did this happen or whatever, before I get into what people said back to me. I did that episode on Instagram Live like I am right now. And when you do an Instagram Live, from what I've experienced, you have this little counter up top that tells you how many people are watching at that moment. I'd say I might see at the end of a IG Live, we had 400 to 500 people kind of like stop through. But at any given moment, there's somewhere between, it could be as low as like 7 people like right now, or there could be 35 people, who are, I guess, doing whatever kind of engagement is needed to show up top. Now, when I have people here, I want to keep them here. And when you see people leaving or you don't see you're getting hearts for things you're saying, you tend to, I'll put it this way, you tend to optimize for the crowd. And as I'm reading the Berkshire letter, I'm completely optimizing for you guys, meaning those of you who are watching live. And in a lot of ways, it allows me to be in some ways, more of my authentic personality, because it feels a little weird if I'm just reading by myself, in like a recording studio versus actually having a conversation, or at least it feels more conversational. Now, for those of you who've, and I know a lot of you have listened to every single episode of the podcast, and I as I always say, I appreciate that so much. For those of you who know me from these lives, a sense of humor, that's a big part of who I am. I have a goofy sense of humor. I enjoy using my sense of humor. I've always had a sense of humor. It doesn't mean everyone thinks I'm funny, but since I was a little kid, that's always been a trait people associated with me. I have a letter from a first grade teacher it was like, "Dear Christopher, Today you made me laugh. Thank you for sharing your gift with me. Like something like that, right? This is, I got the, funniest superlative in high school, that kind of thing. I'm not a clown, obviously, but I like to use my sense of humor with this content because it makes it more digestible. Some of these topics, frankly, and I said this in that episode that this person's referencing, some of this content can be really boring. And I think one of the reasons it hasn't spread more, meaning not CMQ content, but just, why are more people not learning about Buffett and things like that, is because it's just often not presented in a way that's very appealing to anyone beyond, kind of like a finance circle. And so something I've tried to do, and I do it because I see it working, is I blend my personality with it. Now, again, I am on IG Live, so there's a certain element where I'm probably hamming it up a little bit just to be entertaining and to optimize for people staying here. Like if I see hearts, I'm like, well, that's funny to people, so I'll keep doing this. So of course I'm playing to the crowd, and that's, that's on me. But as I was reading this letter, and I haven't gone back and listened to that episode, when I do these episodes, once I'm done with them, I'm done with them. I listen to them much later on, but it's like I put so much into it that it feels weird for me to hear myself back once it's gone through our QA process, because I just feel like it feels just a little bit like I freak out a little bit in my head, like, oh, people are hearing this, and I can find all these things wrong with it that most people don't even hear. So I haven't gone back and listened to this episode again, but I do know and I do remember vividly. And I checked this with a colleague of mine whose name is Jake, who is basically every time I'm done with an episode, I send it to him for the QA. He gives it a listen through. We have a checklist. We use a checklist like Charlie Munger would advocate to make sure it's the same quality that you've come to expect. I'm huge on making sure that we never say something that's not true. I don't want to do anything that would hurt our credibility. Especially being outsiders in this, call it, financial world. And it's really important to me that we're out providing information and information not only you're able to use, but that I'm not just talking out of, the side of my head. That was a nice way to say it. Now, with this episode in particular, as I'm reading the Buffett letters, I've done numerous episodes about how important and how valuable the Berkshire letters have been to me as an investor. I've said before, I think one of the episodes, I almost remember it exactly. I said, this is a reminder to read these episodes more and more, or read these letters more and more, because they're just packed with wisdom. Like I'm always better after reading a Berkshire letter. It doesn't matter what year it's from. I gained something from it. The latest letter that Buffett put out, it's a great letter. It's packed with all sorts of good little nuggets that you can remember and use as an investor. But as I was reading it aloud, he used italics over and over and over again. Now, I'm not saying Buffett can't write, but as I was reading it for you guys as a live audience, I'm emphasizing the italics. It's like in Anchorman when Ron Burgundy is reading directly from the teleprompter and he reads as the teleprompter says. It was a little bit of a Ron Burgundy moment, but I'm not Ron Burgundy, so I'm saying, God, here's another more italics, and I'm hamming it up a little bit. I'd back up and go like, "Come on, dude," like that. I'm not disrespecting Warren Buffett, or at least that was certainly not my intent. And I do believe firmly, if you listen to the full breadth and depth of the content, it's so obvious that that's not at all what I would ever do. In that episode, and again, we'll pull out that clip when I do post-production, I even said at the end, all jokes aside, I have a lot of respect for Warren Buffett, yada, 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 yada. Now, if you didn't get to that point, then maybe you would think that I just left it like that. But the thing I really want to talk about that bothered me the most, just because it lives now online forever, is that I, quote, was poking fun at the death of Paul Andrews. Paul Andrews was a business owner that sold his business to Berkshire. Warren Buffett had some very nice things to say about him and shared the story of how he came to buy his business. Now, as I'm reading Buffett's, memory here of how the business opportunity came, in front of him, basically, I felt like it was a terribly negotiated situation. Not that I know the deal points, but because anytime in a negotiation that you're going to come up and say, hey, you're the only person I want to sell to, you have no leverage, right? And we were joking that like Warren Buffett has never overpaid for anything in his entire life. So I'm not saying or suggesting he screwed over Paul Andrews. I don't think I even said those words or insinuated that. Maybe I did. I don't know. But I don't think that's the case. But it was a moment where we were just having fun on IG Live. I was clear, though, after talking about Paul Andrews that, hey, this is a real person who has a family. He passed away. We don't want to bring light to that. So at no point was I poking fun at his death. we were poking fun at the memory that Warren Buffett was sharing. So again, I don't mean to sound defensive. I do care a lot about what I put out there. I care how it's received. I want I want people to like me and not think I'm a big jerk. But I did get some good feedback. Someone said they're like, I understood the humor, but if it was the first episode I ever heard, I would think, wow, this guy's a big jerk. So hey, I can work on that. Maybe I need to remember that not everyone who's listening is one of our loyal, longtime listeners and subscribers. So that's good to remember for me, and it's good to remember that not everyone who's coming in fresh knows that I bring a sense of humor sometimes to these conversations. Now, with that said, I want to share some of the other feedback I received because I posted just a very informal stories post about this to sort of share my initial thoughts on that review. And let me share those with you now. I have this pulled up. It'll be a little, it's not going to flow perfectly, but here's what we have. The first comes from Joe, and I'm not saying people's last name just out of respect for their privacy, but Joe says, Chris, I really thought the episode was funny. I appreciate that you made it clear that you weren't trying to be disrespectful, but it wasn't necessary. So there you go. Joe's mentioning what I remembered saying, which is that we have great respect for Warren Buffett, etc. He continues and says that anyone who has followed you more than a few days knows your true motives. Thumbs up. Appreciate that, Joe. I really did appreciate that. I responded to him on Instagram as well. Next up, I have a comment here from, it looks like Johans, who says, agree, it was painful to listen to you going on and on about those italics. Once or twice, okay, but dozens of times, ? Bad content, thumbs down. So, sorry to hear that. Again, that I can deal with because it's not like he took it as if I was making fun of someone's death, which I would, like I said, would never, ever do. Next up from Francisco. Francisco says, you do amazing work for the investing community. Don't let this type of comment get in your head. Sorry if my English is not the best. Ha ha ha. Hugs from Portugal. Francisco, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Someone else writes, this comes from, they don't have a name. I won't read their username just to protect their privacy, but it says, do you need to bring humor, fun, and digestibility to Buffett and Munger? Their wit, charm, intellect, and success are their own. Why interpret it for them? I'm not going to change. I'm not going to change on that front. I think if I want to just read what they say, that you could just, you could just enter their speeches into like a text-to-speech translator and listen to it. But I don't think that would add anything. And what I find anyway is that sometimes what they say is not always in the language or in the way that we think and talk about now. So I also like applying it to things that are more relevant to a younger audience, like I'm part of, being a millennial. We have Gen Z listeners, we have Gen X listeners, we have older listeners. We don't have like an age limit or anything, but again, I appreciate all the feedback, so I don't mind that that's what someone has to say. I'd be willing to bet though they don't listen, because if they did, I think they would understand, but that is what it is. It's funny, if I was thinking like more of these were positive, and as I get going down here, they're all negative, and I'm just completely depressed by the end of this. So Alejandro says, and this was in response to the story, says, I wish I'd heard it. I haven't seen anything disrespectful from you at all. So cool. Next up, this is from someone who has the name DM. They say, as a longtime listener, I got the jokes. But if it was my first time with the podcast, I'd probably think, what a jerk. That's what I mentioned at the start. And, again, that was really good feedback, and I definitely will learn from that. David responds, he says, the world is too serious, #legalize comedy. I agree, and I appreciate that. Next up from Corey. Corey said, ignore losers like that. There are people dying from cluster bombs in Ukraine, and Americans just want to cry about nonsense. Now, I'm an American, and yeah, there is a bit of an outrage culture right now. I don't know if this, well, yeah, I do know the person who left the review is in America, because there's like separate reviews based on countries. So there you have it. Next up, Charlie says, oh, this is not about that episode. Let me make sure I give you these. So that was the main ones. I don't think I missed any. Maybe I did, but I think I got you guys the majority. Just want to triple check here in case I missed anything. Oh, this is nice. Someone says, you're a dead man. No, I'm just kidding. No one said that. So that was the feedback I received based on my initial response to the stories. If you listen to the episode, I was trying something new. We read the letter live. Those of you who were in that live, were enjoying it. And that's why I released it, because I saw the response and the comments and the hearts and all that. But again, this person was very upset with my sense of humor blended with the content. But the only pushback I had is I at no point, and if someone interpreted like this, that's on them for their interpretation, and then I need to be more clear. But I would never, ever, 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 ever times a million times ever poke fun at someone's death. That's just, it goes against everything I believe. Watch someone pull out like there's somehow I've made fun of someone. It's weird when you do enough of these. I think like 75 episodes. Like I'm sure I've said something along the way that I would regret. Like, that wasn't the best. But just keep in mind the context when you're in front of an audience and you're just trying to keep people entertained, and more importantly, trying to get these big ideas and these enduring lessons across, not only to help you guys and to be valuable to you guys, but it helps me too. It helps me as an investor. Disrespect to Warren Buffett, again, if you listen to this show, that's not at all anything that has been, what I've been up to. Speaking of Warren Buffett, though, speaking of great respect for Warren Buffett, CMQ has added a new Instagram page. It's Warren Buffett Videos. It just passed 10,000 followers, and it includes nothing but videos of Warren Buffett talking about timeless investing ideas. So if you guys follow the Charlie Munger Quotes page, you might also like that page. No pressure. It's not something, I'm trying to monetize. Just want you guys to know it exists. And I think it's another example of just trying to help spread these really great, enduring ideas that people like Warren Buffett have done such a great job of teaching and sharing. I look at myself as just someone who's like Paul Revere going around like the British are coming, but except instead of warning people of an impending invasion, I'm trying to share enduring lessons and wisdom about investing that we all can use and apply in 2022 and beyond. But anyway, again, I really do value all the reviews. They've all been positive up to this point, and I've I learn a lot from them, and it helps me see what you see in the content, because again, I'm too close to it at times. Have no doubt there will be more negative reviews in the future. That's something that I think as we grow, I should expect. I'm going to be mindful of the fact that now as we're getting bigger, that it won't be everyone who's listening is not a long-time listener, that there are people who are now listening for the first time. And that if you are, if you're introduced to the content that way, you might get the wrong idea, or someone could get the wrong idea. But I also have to remember, and this was a lesson last thing I'll say here before we kind of wrap this up. Deep breath. I feel like I didn't take a breath that whole time. When I was about 5 episodes in, I think I got a call from a great friend of mine named Dan Zauderer. And Dan is doing all sorts of great things in New York City, helping out the less fortunate. So I'll have to try to talk more about that in the future and maybe have him on. But he's just a great guy, and I consider him a dear friend, and someone I'm proud to say is a friend, more importantly. So Dan had reached out to me because I think he was driving somewhere for a long period of time, and he listened to the first maybe 3 or 5 episodes. And he said, "Hey man, like I really liked it, but I don't really hear you in it." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, "Well, I just like your sense of humor and like the Franco that I know." And I think he called me irreverent, but which that doesn't matter as much as that's when I decided, let me layer some humor into this. Not because everyone's going to find it funny, but because I have to find a way to bring me into this so that I can have the energy and motivation to keep doing it and not just be doing these like super serious, here's what we learned from like that's just it's not going to scale. And so that was a turning point. And obviously I've tried different things. I will continue to try different things that other people aren't trying, because that's how you grow. And that's something I'm comfortable doing. But I think, in terms of my sense of humor is not going to leave the content. And from what I've heard, not just from what I shared with you just now, but I've heard this throughout the way, the humor element opens it up to a larger audience who, I like the fact that we're bringing more people to this kind of content. As I said, I wish I had discovered all this much earlier in my life. And even if it was right in front of me, it was probably in a way that just was boring to me. And as I've said, I think I said in that episode, this content can be boring. So it's really important that we, make it less boring, but still maintain, still maintain the integrity and the message of what we're trying to get across. And that's something I'll continue to try to do. One of my dogs is getting water right now. So the next review will be like, next time, don't disrespect Warren Buffett by having your dog drink water when we're listening. By the way, if you're on live, that's going to sound weird. It'll sound cool in audio because it's the microphone. Oh, there you go. So on that note, as I said, I think there will be times when I'm not going to appeal to everybody. And in some ways, it's good that I'm not appealing to everybody, and someone felt it was relevant enough they had to say something. So the only thing I said I want to push back on and just emphasize over and over again is I would never and did not poke fun at the death of Paul Andrews. It bothers me that that's online, that that's now associated to my name. I'm not using a stage name. I put my integrity and my brand on this. And so to have that out there bothers me, but that's what I get for putting myself out there. So I can deal with it. I've got I'm sensitive. I'm a sensitive guy, but I've got thick skin. I can deal with it. I don't take it as personally as I probably did when I first woke up that morning. It's funny. I had a conversation with my mom about it though. And I'll tell you guys a quick story before we wrap this up. But my dad, long time ago, used to do editorials on the one of the local news channels in Detroit. And it was kind of like he basically just get up there and talk his talk at what he felt like was going wrong in the city, and he'd call out like the governor and the city council, and just kind of like a no nonsense, very much like it's the type of stuff you guys would like. And it's funny because I found the tapes probably a couple of years ago, and it's really funny watching them. And he would drop in like all sorts of little one-liners. But my mom was reminding me that my dad got threats from people who were like in prison. They were like, when I get out, I'm coming to see you, like stuff like that. And it is what it is. That stuff's going to happen. So I can deal with this review. And obviously I'm trying just to bring some light to it. She also reminded me of something her father said that I didn't remember him saying. My grandfather, his name was Walt, would say that be wary of the man who everyone likes, because it means they don't stand up for their principles, their values, things like that. So I can deal with some negativity. As I said, I just wanted to harp and call out that one piece that I felt like was a total misinterpretation or misrepresentation. But I'm not going to change the podcast based on that, but it's something that's good to have that feedback loop and remember that if someone was new, they might be like, this guy's kind of a jerk, because I'm not a jerk all the time. Sometimes, no, just playing. But anyway, James says, and I'm looking right here because we are on IG Live. James says, I get the sensitivity, I do, but can we focus on the fact that oil hit 120? James, you missed that episode. We actually just talked about that in a news segment from about 25 minutes ago. But yes, that is crazy. Henry gives us the thumbs up. I'm just scrolling through the comments real quick before we wrap this up here, guys. Willem actually reached out to me about the italics before I saw that review, said, I enjoyed how you kept the episode jaunty, which I have to look that word up. What's jaunty mean? I think I know, but let me just see. Lively, cheerful, and self-confident manner. Good. I appreciate that, man. And I will, that's the feedback I want to keep remembering too, is to not get too serious on this stuff. James says, people are always going to hate. That's true. Brown says, great page, man. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. James also said, Chris, you're awesome, man. This podcast rocks. Respect on keeping the integrity of the podcast day in and day out. Thank you, man. I appreciate you saying that. Appreciate all you guys. Thanks for hanging out with me and checking this out. We have Ace says, oh, man, drown out the negative haters, brother. Be yourself and keep going. Will do. Some other account that I'm not going to say the name because it's kind of inappropriate. They said, show feet. Okay. All right. On that note, guys, it's been the CMQ Investing Podcast. Thank you for listening to this. Thanks for allowing me to experiment and try different formats and go in different paths on an episode like this where we respond to some negative feedback, some negative criticism. This won't be the last time there's negative criticism or feedback. It won't be the last time that I rub someone the wrong way. But you guys know our core, as long as the core CMQ crew feels like the integrity is still there, then that's all that really, really matters to me. Because you guys know what my intent is, where my heart is, and what we're trying to achieve here, not only for ourselves as investors, but just in the larger conversation. So thank you again. I really do appreciate it. You guys who are on live, you see it in my eyes. I do mean it. Check out the YouTube channel. Just look up CMQ Investing on YouTube. I'm trying to put up, I say an episode or a video a day. That might be unrealistic considering that I run a business, but I am a workhorse and I will push myself. So definitely new videos every week. So check out those. And thank you again for all your support, everyone. And we will talk soon. All right. Later.